I gained 70 pounds in about a year and a half. I never had a regular period. I always felt like I had just hormones kind of all over the place. It wasn't really mood swings or anything. I felt off. Every person I would go to would say, "You're young, it's normal, it'll regulate. You don't know what you're talking about." Someone suggested that I go to an endocrinologist. And she's like, "I need to give you a blood test, but I think you've got PCOS.
70 pounds. In 1 year. While millions of people watched her every single week on screen. That's what happened to Sasha Pieterse, and she wasn't eating any differently, and she wasn't moving any less. She tried everything conventional, cutting calories, pushing harder in workouts, and nothing moved, because nothing she was trying was aimed at the actual cause. When she finally got diagnosed, her real turnaround came from 3 things together: a shift toward higher protein and lower refined carbs, Pilates and strength training instead of intense cardio, and a period on a medication called metformin. 3 different-looking strategies. 1 actual target. That target is insulin. Specifically, insulin resistance, and it's the piece almost nobody explains properly, even in videos that cover PCOS, now renamed PMOS, in detail. Not what insulin resistance actually means. Not why it's the reason the weight won't move no matter what you cut out. Not how to tell if you have it, versus just assuming you do because you have PMOS. And almost nobody explains what your body looks like on the inside when insulin runs too high, or, less commonly, when it runs too low. That gap is what this video closes. By the end, you'll know exactly what insulin resistance is doing to your body, the visible signs that tell you it's happening, the tests that actually confirm it, and what specifically to watch for as a woman living with PMOS. What insulin resistance actually is. Insulin is the hormone that tells your cells to pull sugar out of your bloodstream and use it for energy. In a body without resistance, a small amount of insulin does that job efficiently. In insulin resistance, your cells stop responding to insulin the way they should. So your pancreas compensates by producing more and more of it just to get the same result. That's the part almost nobody explains clearly. Insulin resistance doesn't mean you have too little insulin. For the vast majority of women with PMOS, it means you have chronically elevated insulin, working overtime in the background, all day, every day. And that excess insulin doesn't just sit there quietly managing blood sugar. It sends signals throughout your entire body, which is exactly why insulin resistance ends up connected to weight gain, skin changes, cravings, and the hormone imbalances at the center of PMOS. Why it specifically causes weight gain. Here's the mechanism, in plain terms. High circulating insulin is a storage signal. It tells your body to hold onto fat, particularly around the abdomen, and it actively works against fat breakdown at the same time. This is sometimes referred to as the insulin belly, weight that concentrates around the midsection specifically because of hormonal signaling, not because of how much someone is eating. This is why so many women with PMOS describe doing everything right, cutting calories, exercising consistently, and still not seeing the scale move. If insulin is chronically elevated, the body is being told to store fat faster than diet and exercise alone can override. It's not a willpower problem. It's a signaling problem, and it's the single biggest reason generic weight loss advice fails for PMOS specifically. The visible signs of high insulin. This is the part worth screenshotting. High insulin often shows up on your body before a single blood test confirms it. Skin tags, small, soft growths, usually on the neck, underarms, or under the breasts. They form because high insulin triggers extra skin cell growth. Acanthosis nigricans, dark, velvety, thickened patches of skin, most commonly on the back of the neck, underarms, groin, or knuckles. This is one of the clearest physical markers of insulin resistance that exists, and it's often dismissed as just dark skin instead of investigated. Persistent hormonal acne and oily skin, especially along the jawline, driven by the same excess insulin pushing androgen production higher. Sudden or excess hair. Growth on the face, chest, or jawline, or thinning hair at the scalp, both androgen-driven, both downstream of high insulin. Constant sugar and carb cravings that feel hard to control, not just occasional hunger, often described as a craving loop that gets worse the more processed sugar is eaten, because it keeps re-triggering insulin spikes. Fatigue or brain fog after meals, especially after carb-heavy meals, a crash that feels disproportionate to what was eaten. Increasing waist circumference even when overall weight isn't changing dramatically because fat is being redirected specifically to the midsection. Difficulty losing weight despite consistent effort, the frustrating, often invalidating symptom that sends a lot of women looking for answers in the first place. What high insulin actually does inside the body. Beyond what's visible, here's what's happening internally and why it matters specifically for PMOS. High insulin works together with your reproductive hormones in a way that pushes the ovaries to produce more androgens, which is a major driver of the irregular cycles, the ovulation problems, and the fertility struggles associated with PMOS. It's not a coincidence that insulin resistance and hormonal imbalance show up together this often. One is actively fueling the other. Left unaddressed over years. Chronically high insulin is also linked to a higher long-term risk for type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular issues, which is exactly why the medical community pushed for a name that reflects the metabolic side of this condition, not just the reproductive side. What low insulin looks like and why it's a different situation. This deserves its own honest section because it's a common point of confusion. PMS is not a low insulin condition. If anything, it's almost always the opposite. Low insulin, hypoinsulinemia, is a separate situation most commonly associated with type 1 diabetes, where the body isn't producing enough insulin at all. The signs look very different from high insulin: extreme thirst, frequent urination, unexplained weight loss instead of weight gain, fatigue, blurred vision, and in severe, untreated cases, a dangerous buildup of ketones that requires emergency care. If you have PMS, this section isn't describing your likely experience. It's here so you know the difference and don't mistake one for the other. If you ever notice these specific signs, especially rapid unexplained weight loss alongside extreme thirst, that's a different conversation to have with a doctor immediately, separate from anything PMOS related. The tests that actually confirm it. Symptoms point you in a direction. These are the tests that give you an actual answer. Fasting insulin test measures how much insulin is in your blood after not eating for several hours. Elevated fasting insulin is one of the most direct indicators of insulin resistance. HOME-IR, a calculation your doctor can run using your fasting insulin and fasting glucose together, giving a clearer resistance score than either number alone. Fasting glucose and HbA1c show how your blood sugar is trending over time, not just in the moment. Oral glucose tolerance test with insulin. In some cases, doctors will check how your insulin responds after drinking a glucose solution, which can catch resistance that a single fasting test might miss. Ask for these by name. Can we check my fasting insulin and run a HOME-IR is a very different, much more specific request than can we check if something's wrong, and it tends to get a faster, more useful answer. This is exactly what Sasha's approach was targeting from the start. Diet, training, and metformin weren't three separate strategies. They were three ways of attacking the same number. Insulin resistance. The do's and don'ts for PMOS. Pulling everything in this video into one practical list. Ask for a fasting insulin test and a HOME-IR, not just a standard glucose check. Catch what a basic panel often misses. Do track your waist circumference over time, not just the number on the scale, it moves first. Do treat skin tags and dark, velvety patches as a metabolic signal worth mentioning to any doctor, not just a cosmetic issue for a dermatologist. Do prioritize consistent sleep. Poor or irregular sleep measurably worsens insulin resistance, which makes it just as relevant here as diet or exercise. Don't assume eat less, move more will work the same way it does for someone without insulin resistance. The lever that needs to move is insulin, not just calories. Don't skip meals and then eat a large one later. Long gaps followed by big meals are one of the most common ways insulin gets spiked unnecessarily. Don't wait for major weight gain to take this seriously. Insulin resistance can be present and worth investigating before the scale shows anything at all. Don't dismiss cravings as a lack of discipline. A craving loop driven by insulin spikes is a hormonal pattern, not a willpower failure. Insulin resistance doesn't announce itself with one clear symptom. It shows up in pieces: your skin, your energy, your cravings, your weight, and it's often dismissed piece by piece instead of recognized as one connected pattern. Now you know what the pattern actually looks like and exactly what to do about it. Share this with a woman who's been told to just eat less and move more, and it never worked. Subscribe to Health the Woman for more of these breakdowns every week. Your body wasn't failing to respond to effort, it was responding to a hormone nobody explained to you. Now it has been.